We are now talking to Pro Football Focus Research and Development Manager Eric Eager. Eric, what's going on, bud?
Fellas, this is fun. I'm doing well. A couple weeks till the season starts for the NFL, so it's crunch time.
Oh, it's crunch time, all right. And by the way, that's one of our segments on our Weekend Crunch radio show on 103.9. So let's get down to the crunch, baby. But before we get into some of the questions that we're going to ask you when it comes to the NFL, how are you and your family with COVID over the last couple of years?
Look, I don't know if we've had it and just didn't test positive for it. I've tested a few times, like when I went to the Super Bowl and the Combine and all that. I have never tested positive for it. So I feel like I've either gotten lucky or I had it but didn't know. Getting to spend a little bit more time every day with my family at home has actually been a plus, but obviously there have been some downsides to it as well. But, we all got kind of lucky, I think, that they played an NFL season that year. That's for sure.
So everybody knows we are talking to Pro Football Focus Research and Development Manager Eric Eager. So, Eric, why don't we get into the New York football teams first, and then we'll go throughout the league and some of your thoughts on where you think some of these teams are going to be when the season begins. But the New York Jets, obviously losing Zach Wilson, maybe for week one. A lot of people expect him to be out week one, and he'll be back week two. And some of the things that we've seen so far in the preseason, I have seen that most teams are not throwing to Sauce Gardner. That's something that we've seen so far. But also, the secondary of the New York Jets have been lackluster, to be exact. I mean, I know we haven't seen DJ Reed. He really hasn't been on the field. But Hall, which we expected to be a big piece of this defense, has not looked good. Some of these guys, these secondary players that we thought were going to stand out this preseason, have not. What are your thoughts to where this team's going to be moving on to this season? Is this defense going to be as good as everybody expects it to be?
Yeah, that's always the risk. I think cornerback is such a premium position, but you need to have more than just one or two good corners because opposing offenses, especially in that division, can find the weaker guy, right? So even though I think Sauce Gardner has 18 snaps this year in coverage without even being targeted, which is the highest in preseason among players, he's going to be good. But the problem is, I think that you need more than just a good corner or two. I think it obviously helps if you can get some pass rush out of Jermaine Johnson and some Carl Lawson, as well as linebacker play that can sort of span the field a little bit. But they're not that good at linebacker either. All this is to say, I think they'll be better than last year, but that's gonna, that's not that hard. The offense is really gonna have to carry this team. They put a lot into the offensive line, even after Beckham's injury. They put a lot into wide receiver and tight end, and obviously running back at Breece Hall to go with Michael Carter from last year's draft. They're gonna have to carry it because I don't think their defense is gonna be good enough in an AFC where there's so many good offenses. They'll be hanging on for dear life on defense. Their offense is gonna have to pick up the slack.
So I'm actually going to start this interview with one of the questions from our fans, John Suggs. He said that you said that the Giants will win more than 7. Can you explain which games, and do you think Saquon Barkley will stay healthy this year?
Yeah, so that's with our simulation, we have them with about 8 wins. It's an easy schedule, right? So they open at Tennessee. We don't know if the Titans are going to be good, but you look at bad teams on their schedule: Panthers, Bears, Jaguars, Seahawks, Texans, Lions, Commanders twice, and then by the end of the season, the Vikings could be bad. I mean, you're talking about having, like I said, from a point spread perspective, the easiest schedule in the NFL. A good home field advantage, which I know hasn't bared fruit over the past few years because they haven't been a good team. There's also, I think either one of the Eagles or the Cowboys, as they do every year, is probably going to implode. But it's just based upon entirely on their schedule, which has, as I just listed out here, a bunch of teams that are relatively easy to go against in this conference. The NFC really, the weaker of the two conferences this year, and I think the Giants could be a team as they benefit from it the most.
When we talk about Dable, who has been really a breath of fresh air for the New York Giants. Everything that we've seen offensively from Daniel Jones throughout the preseason, we've seen some really fun, offensive plays by Daniel Jones using his legs, staying inside and out of the pocket, and some fancy things we've seen Dable run through Buffalo with Josh Allen. What are your thoughts to the growth of Daniel Jones? Do you think Daniel Jones could be the quarterback of the future now that Dable is there?
I don't think so. And this goes against kind of like, I think he has potential this year to put up a season like Blake Bortles had for the 2017 Jaguars, which is to say, I don't know if you can give him the long-term deal. In fact, quarterbacks now either make the $45 million that Kyler Murray made, or they make like what Jameis Winston or Baker Mayfield, et cetera, make, which is substantially lower. I don't know if the Giants. I don't know what Daniel Jones could do this year for the Giants to go back to the table and say, "Hey, we want to give you, $40 million per year." Like, I don't think that's going to happen, but I think he can play well enough where they maybe bridge him a little bit, give him like 1 year, $20 million, which is reportedly what Tampa Bay was going to offer Jameis Winston if they didn't get Tom Brady. I think that there's that. But yeah, I think all the stuff you brought up is pertinent. Like he gives you a floor with his legs, especially if he can stay healthy. He has gotten better at not turning the ball over. He was terrible at it early on. And you look at the offense, there's some talent there. Like I know Kenny Golladay hasn't really been what they've wanted him to be.
Oh, he's been a
Wan'Dale
bust.
Robinson, Kadarius Toney, and Saquon Barkley, who I think can all provide good offense, and they have 2 tackles that are top 10 picks in the NFL.
Yeah, the saddest stat of the year for the Giants: Andrew Thomas caught more touchdowns than Kenny Galladay last year.
Yeah.
That should say all you need to know. So speaking, you were talking about the big quarterback contracts. We just heard yesterday that Lamar Jackson turned down a contract that would have made him the second highest paid quarterback in NFL history. So what do you think it is with him? Does he not trust the Ravens? Does he want out of the Ravens? Or is he trying to say, all right, I'm going to bank on myself and go for more?
Well, it's silly for him to bet on himself this year because, unfortunately, like the Ravens have team control over him for 2 straight years, and the salary cap hit for a quarterback on the franchise tag is not that bad. So I think Lamar, this is where he could benefit from having an agent, because I think almost all the time a player is going to think, oh, the team is trying to screw me over, when an agent can sort of be like, well, I'm going to negotiate a contract where both parties are happy. I don't think, obviously, Lamar being a quarterback and not an agent is probably not equipped to build a contract that benefits both parties. So I think that there's always going to be, that issue with him is unless he's the highest paid guy, I just don't think he's ever going to look at it as a situation where he's not getting screwed over.
He should hire his mother. We are now talking to Pro Football Focus Research and Development Manager Eric Eager. Now, Eric, we look at the AFC, and the AFC is stacked. We talk about Kansas City, even though they're going to take a step back because losing Tyreek Hill and some of the offensive weapons that they lost in the offseason, it is going to affect a great Patrick Mahomes. But they added some good weapons in the draft, and they had a decent draft. And also, when you look at that division, it is stacked. Russell Wilson right now is playing for the Broncos, and they have a pretty good defense, and they have a lot of offensive weapons like Jerry Jeudy, who I think is going to be explosive this year, and Sullivan. But also, when you look at Vegas with the weapons they have with Adams and that division, and throughout that AFC, where do you see this AFC really falling from piece to piece?
Yeah, I actually disagree with the idea the Chiefs are going to be worse. I think the entire league was forcing them to play left-handed by being so deep. They would play cover 2 no matter what the Chiefs did. And right. Tyreek Hill turned into kind of an underneath receiver. He had, his average depth of target was like 1.5 yards lower than the previous year. His yards after the catch were lower as well. He had 23 drops the last 2 years, which I think is because he's not used to catching the underneath stuff. I actually think they'll be better.
Really?
But just because receiving cores are better when they're deeper. I think and Packers fans know this from having the best receiver in the NFL, but not being able to win in the playoffs, which is when you play good defenses, they can shut down one guy. They have a hard time shutting down 4 or 5 guys. So I think that, but be that as it may, I think the Chiefs are going to be the 2 seed again. I think it's going to be Buffalo. Buffalo is a house. And I think other than a Josh Allen injury, they should have a pretty good, situation there. I think the Chiefs are going to be pretty good. They'll probably win that division again, even though it's going to be a lot harder. They're not favored against the field for the first time in forever. And then from there, I think it's Baltimore, Cincinnati in the North. I think it's just Indianapolis in the South, if not Indianapolis and Jacksonville, who I think with a modest bump from Trevor Lawrence could be pretty good with an easy schedule and an easy division and a superstar possibility at quarterback. And then I think in the West, it's probably going to be the Chargers and the Broncos. I will say, if I'm a Broncos fan, I'm a little worried because when Nathaniel Hackett was the offensive coordinator for the Packers, it took Rodgers 1 year before he became the MVP, not immediate. So there is a chance that this is like kind of a feeling out process for Russell Wilson in Denver, in which case I think Denver might just like struggle a little bit. But there's always the chance that the Chargers will underperform. I mean, that happens like every year. So the West is interesting. I don't know, after the Chiefs, of those three teams, I think one will make it, and I'm not exactly sure who it is. I'll bet on the Chargers, though, among those three teams.
You'll appreciate this as a Broncos fan. I always call the Chargers, since 2010, when they lost to the playoffs to the Jets, the least clutch team in football. They always find the weirdest ways to lose.